you give somebody who wants to engage with kids and wants to pursue that craft? What advice today would you?
I would, it wouldn't be that much different than the advice I'd give myself in 1993, 94, which is like, look at other people, other businesses and performers who are doing something similar and ask them how they are doing it. Because most of us are pretty helpful and open because we've all struggled to make it work. And the more good things are out there, the better it is for me, right? It's like it's selfless, but it's also a little selfish. It's like if there are good performers out there, schools want more, and more
Okay,
in other programs.
talk to me about that, because I hear a lot about scarcity mindset. There's a
Oh,
lot of, this competitive nature within the sector. Go down that road about how you benefit from better quality
oh my
work.
gosh. I think like what I was saying, like the more good art there is out there, the better it is for everybody. So I've never bought into the scarcity thing, and I've had a lot of people over my career ask, um, for advice, and I give it in little pieces, right? It's like I'm not going to lay it all on them because I've done that before, and people just A, they get overwhelmed, and B, they're not ready for it all. They're not necessarily there yet. So it's like you have to have a conversation with them and figure out like what is the problem you're trying to solve right now, and I'll see if I can help you with that. Um, I'm
Okay,
trying to think. Go ahead.
so how do you carve your niche?
I mean, I've just always been a niche. I again, like this storyteller helped me get started, and he was really pushing me in the storytelling direction, and um, he he gave me some ideas, but for me, it was always about science. It's always been about science and nature and conservation. And I tried stuff that worked better than other things and just dropped the stuff that doesn't work. I mean, I've just always been niche. I didn't deliberately try to carve out a niche. It worked because I have a niche, but it wasn't something I was super conscious of. Like I see like in the storytelling world, there are people who are like, I'll do ghost stories and I'll do holiday stories and I'll do folk tales for kids and I'll do grown up stuff. And I mean, for me, like that would be spreading myself way too thin. And people can really wrap their head around this is a science and an animal, like a nature presentation.
So would that be advice that you would give somebody, is find your niche?
Yes. Yes. I'm trying to think if there's any like I'm sure there are situations where I would say no, but like people people want to know what they're getting. And I think the more clearly you have defined that, the better it is to communicate when you're selling yourself, like what you do. So
It,
having a niche is helpful.
so let's go back to what we
Mm-hmm.
talked about a little bit ago, which is advice. And you
Mm-hmm.
said sometimes, or I've learned not to give all of the advice because
Mm-hmm.
people, it's a lot, they're not ready. If you
Yeah.
could think of what is the most important piece of advice you could give a performing artist, creator today, what would that be?
It's a business. It's a business and you've got to treat it like that. Because I think so many people, like I have made a living at this because when I look at the calendar and I see big gaps, I get on the phone and I call people and like I get on the phone and I'll call people who had me 2 or 3 years ago and say, would you be interested in bringing me back? And a lot of people are not willing to do that. Like I am willing to do the things that that a lot of people aren't willing to do. It's because it's a business, and it's an art, and I love it, and everything. My heart and soul is in this. But if I did not treat it like a business, I wouldn't have been able to make a living at it, and that doesn't serve anybody.
Did somebody teach you that, or is that something you learned by doing?
A big part of it is just like once you've made that leap of faith, and you're like, I'm an independent artist. You have to try a lot of efforts. I mean, flyers and phone calls and conferences and social media and YouTube, and you have to try a lot of stuff and then see what works. I think the biggest thing that limited me for the longest time is because I was a one-man operation, I figured out a formula for what worked, and I just kept doing that one thing. And it ultimately limits me to it limits me to doing exactly what I'm doing forever, right? And so now I have a manager who helps with a lot of that stuff and also motivates me to do different things. And so my business is now in a place where it's taking some new directions. And hopefully those are, again, it's kind of throwing spaghetti at the wall. But yeah, you just have to treat it like a business. Yeah.
What would you change if you could now?
I would have, I don't know how, for me, having a manager is the thing that has allowed me to see that there are other possibilities with what I do besides just performing. I love performing in schools and I love performing for libraries. They're so much fun. But I also love creating this YouTube content that I make. And I love traveling and doing little video productions. And so we're looking at a possibility of that could actually be more and more of what I do. So having help earlier, I think would have helped. I don't know, everybody I knew that in my realm, my tier, that had an artist, had a manager or a agent, it did not end well. I'd seen so many of them, and so my manager, I connected with her through a high school friend, and he's in arts management, and he said, "I see what you're doing, and nobody in my realm knows you, and I think they should know you. Why don't you have an agent?" And I was like, because I'm making a living. And again, it's I've hammered this one formula over and over again. And he said, well, he said, if you'd be interested, I might be able to find you an agent. And I was like, I'll consider it. Why not? And so that relationship with my manager has just I don't know how I would have gotten through the pandemic without her. I just don't know. And now, there's just so many more possibilities because of her. So I would have loved to have had that earlier in my career, but I'm happy, and I'm happy with where things are and where things are going. And so I try not to think about too much about what would change.
Right. It's evolving.
Yeah.
And and you're always tweaking, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Which is awesome. I will make sure that we link your YouTube and your website in the show notes. Everybody reach out, find Lucas, the Singing Zoologist.
And artists, tune into her podcast because you will learn a ton.
Thank you. Thanks for being a part of Arts Redefined. I'm Angela Maleka. If today's discussion sparked new ideas, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the show. Your support helps other arts leaders discover these valuable insights. Let's continue to push boundaries and create meaningful change in our sector. See you next week for more conversations that redefine the arts.